Okay, so here we are, 2003, and at the end of 2002, we got invited to a church in LA, Harvest Rock Church, and again, we were going to see a ministry that we wanted to have our church in the Southwest Washington area, and to be honest, I wasn't really impressed with that ministry, um, so. We were at this conference. Todd Bentley was there, Cheon, and this guy by the name of Bill Johnson. And he was at this conference and he was speaking, and I was so impressed. Usually I'm not really impressed with teacher-like things, but he wasn't teaching. He was more sharing from his heart. It was like talking from his living room. You're sitting there on the couch and he's talking, and he's sharing stuff from the Bible that you're like, wow, yeah, that makes sense. And to be honest, I don't remember all that he preached on. I don't think that was the issue for me. It was only the fact that I felt immensely the presence of the Lord. So we go to this conference, and I remember I got his email address, and he invited my wife and I to um, a leaders advance in the following May. So that was 2002, 2003. I was, when our church sent us down, it was we came down. It was really kind of sad, but everything broke. The church that we had taken over in the Southwest Washington area. They didn't want to go after the things of God. I remember just, saying we have to go after this stuff, and they really didn't want to. So, I shared previously about all of that. So I'm not going to get into that there, but I will say that a man from a Nazarene church in the area had gotten wind of what happened. He said that we can use his church on a Saturday night. For I don't know what you call them, revival meetings, healing meetings, whatever, evangelism meetings. Now the town that we were part of was a tourist town. There wasn't much else to do there. The locals, whatever, but virtually, every other weekend there was clamming, where people would go to the beach and they would clam, and it was very much a tourist town. So it worked out perfectly for us. Some of the people that, when we were locked out of the church, some of the people that stayed with us, we met on Sunday mornings at my house. And I remember we had this one lady there that she had bone cancer. She had, she had been struggling, and so we prayed for her, and God started to heal her. It was crazy. She had energy again. She wasn't depressed. Periodically, she would go through issues where she would have pains, and then we would pray, and the pain would subside. Now don't forget, in this process, we just got the book. We went to the Leaders Advance in May of 2003, and Bill Johnson had given everybody a copy of this book called When Heaven Invades Earth. Tremendous, tremendous book. I bought a case, and I brought it to, I don't remember if I bought 2 cases or not, but I bought at least a case, and I started giving it to all my friends, pastor friends, and leaders that I knew, and I said, this is what I wanted to go after. This is the thing that impressed my heart when I saw that gentleman without the legs in the late 90s, and I said, wouldn't it be cool if we got out of the van? And this is the thing that I was really, really wanting to go after. I didn't know how to. I didn't know the culture behind it, but all I knew is that's what we wanted. And I felt like we had to pray, and the church wanted to get into that. So we did, and it was really, really crazy. I found that God was just really wanting us to do that too, and God was wanting to do that. So here we are, 2003. In the meantime, the movie theater owner came, and he told us that we could use the theater for $300 per month, and we ended up buying him a projector so he can have free DVD movies on Sunday afternoons and sell popcorn, etc. That was a blessing to him, and it was a blessing to us, and we were able to start building something. And people would continually bring people into our church because they heard that people got healed when they came to our church. And then I remember one of our first services, this woman visitor came into the church, and I remember we just started worship. I mean, we just played the first chord of the song, and she raises both of her hands and she starts to scream. And I'm like, oh Lord, I don't need a screamer right now. I don't need somebody to disrupt the meeting, but I just let it go because it looked like she was just worshiping the Lord. So it was like, all right. And I remember the Lord told me, just let it go. And I did. So not being one to just let it pass at that moment, after the worship was over, I asked this woman what had happened. And she had said that for 10 years, her arms were down by her side and she couldn't lift them to praise. She couldn't lift them up. And I was like, wow, that's so crazy. And so she, this was really cool. She ended up, like the first note she said, her arms all of a sudden went on fire and they raised up high. And she just praised the Lord. And so it was so cool that God would heal her in the worship, but it took away all of my grid for praying for the sick. I thought that you build faith through the worship, through the word, and then you have an altar call and people come forward and they get healing. Well, that's not how this happened. We just played one song. She screams, God heals her, nobody prays for her, and she gets healed. I was like, you got to be kidding me. This lady with 10 years of cancer, she's in this process, and God's doing stuff. And I guess, at one point, she just told me that she's just not going to struggle with this anymore. She just wants to go. And I didn't know how to handle that because I was believing God heals. I believed that God healed everybody. So it was a struggle for me, knowing that this woman's struggle was really, really deep for her. But I was wanting to see people healed, and I wanted to see her get set free. So all this happens in 2003. Through the year 2004, we go into 2004. We didn't have money this time to go down to the leaders' advance, so we didn't. But it was an incredible, incredible moment. My wife and I both got jobs at the local bakery. And then I ended up hurting my back and I couldn't work there anymore. And then my boss had told me that I couldn't come back to work until I was totally better, and doctors released me. In that process, the doctors released me, but he didn't give me any hours, so I went and worked for a pizzeria. Excuse me. Didn't work for a pizzeria. I went to work for a pizzeria. Didn't do that well there, but it was cool because I got to make sandwiches and stuff like that, and that's what they wanted. I ended up getting a job at the local high school. I was a paraeducator for special needs kids, and I was like, wow, it was so cool. I remember, everybody. I remember walking through the halls before school and just praying in the hallways. One kid, he was 15 years old. He had some serious issues. Anyway, he went off and he was slow in his mind, and we kept praying for him. But I remember he took a left hook and hit the vice principal. So the police were called, and I held this guy. He was 15 years old, and I held him. His name is Rick. Called him Ricky. And I just hugged him, and I held him, and I kept him separated from all the danger. And I just remember declaring peace over him, and he calmed down. The police officer came with a taser gun, and I was like, I don't think you need that right now. And I remember they didn't taser him, but they had to take him in with his mother because of the assault charge. That's just what they had to do. And so it was a pretty cool deal, I felt, to see him just come back to peace. And we had a 21-year-old gal in a wheelchair. Her thing was art, and she loved to smile. Her smile was amazing. I was totally blown away by it. So that was for me, it was a really great year. In May 2005, I remember this was nuts. I had been going to school for Microsoft Word applications, and I remember going to college, working at the high school, and getting A's. It was awesome because I could it was just weird, but I was getting A's through the process because I was doing the stuff, and there's a lesson in that. But what I felt was that God was wanting so much more. And so it was May of 2005. We were out, and this is funny. The students challenged the teachers to a race, and I was kind of overweight at the time. I was about 215 or so, in my 6-foot frame, but it wasn't muscle. And I remember they said, "Well, would you run?" And I said, "I'm not sure I could, but if you give me the straightaway, I'll do it." Well, they put me on the third leg, which is the curve, which is the turn. And I was blown away by that because you can't really, you have to run with the motion of your body. And I remember as I got the baton, I started running, and I was running pretty good. But the guy after me was really, really fast, and I had to lean forward to give him the baton, and as I did, he took the baton, and I fell. I lost my balance, and I fell, and I broke my right arm right at the radius, and it snapped like this, and I have actually it was like that, and I have the X-ray from it. I was like, you got to be kidding me, and so I'm going down there, I'm going into shock. And I remember nobody knew what to do, so I just said, "Hey, listen, get me a jacket, get me warm. I'm going into shock here." Then they said, "Do you want an ambulance?" And I said, "No, just get me to the hospital. My arm's broken." And I guess they heard the snap like 100 yards away. So I get to the hospital, and it looked like the Three Stooges were coming out of the thing. They didn't know what to do. And I was in so much pain. I was getting ready to puke, and they gave me a shot, which took away the nausea, got me into the chair, the wheelchair. They wheeled me in, and fortunately, the orthopedic surgeon was there that day, and he ended up was able to put a plate and I think it was 10 screws in my arm, for that issue, for the break. So there I was, and I was in the hospital overnight, and I was hooked up to morphine, and my wife tells me that I was talking incoherent. That was pretty funny. So I was just blown away by it all. Anyway, so I have this cast on my arm. I've got, the morphine was making me sick. The pills they gave me was making me ill, so I didn't take the pills, and I would rather be in the pain than be sick. So, a few weeks later, they went and they took the staples out of my arm. They gave me some physical therapy, and it worked out really well. And then something happens in 2015 that I'll come back to, where God ended up taking the titanium plate and the screws out of my arm, dissolving them. It was really cool. So, so here we are. It's 2006, and we kind of feel like my wife really felt that we needed to leave Long Beach, Washington, and move back up to the Seattle area. So we moved back up there, and I was, I was a little blown away by it. We ended up getting jobs at we ended up getting jobs at Avis and all. But in the meantime, in the summer of 2006, I had an opportunity to fly down to Arizona to work on finishing at the Kierland Weston in Scottsdale. So, went out there. I mean, it was just something to do. It was a job. And so we're there, and it was really, really hot. I mean, it was really hot. It was about 137 in the building because, we were doing, it was before all the electricity was set up for the air conditioning. So it's 137 inside, it's 110 outside, 115, 120 outside. So there we were working, and then our friend, one of our friends who came down with us, with me at the time, he ended up getting dehydrated one day. And now I drank a ton of water, I drank a ton of iced tea, I drank a ton of Gatorade. He wasn't drinking a whole lot, but anyway, he got dehydrated and almost had heat stroke. So we do that. Now we finish, and then so we're flying back to Seattle. We had like a month where we got to see our wives and a couple weeks, and then I ended up going to. I ended up flying out to Virginia. We flew out to New York first of all to see my mom. She was sick. She had dementia, and so she was in this place. One of the I don't know what you call them. These health one of the places for dementia patients. And so I was there, and it was one of the most heartbreaking things that I felt was that my mom saw me, and she goes, it had that look, and I don't know if you know the look, but it was like the look of like, I know you from somewhere, but I can't picture where I know you from and what I know you, how I know you. And so to me it was crazy. Now my mom was not able to eat fats, but she loved vanilla Oreo cookies. She ate them like nothing. It was awesome. So that's 2006, 2007. So we're so in that process, I fly down to Virginia to work with my friend, and Virginia was like even worse than Arizona. It was 98 degrees outside, 98% humidity at Norfolk, Virginia, and you can't breathe. And the building this building was completed, and we were just doing stuff in it, and it was still hot. It was like 130 degrees inside the building. And I just thought, is this what my life is going to be like? After that, we went to Colorado. Actually, we flew back to Arizona, or back to Seattle, then down to Arizona, and then over to Denver, Colorado, and we were supposed to do a cabinet fix in Avon. I ended up breaking the countertop. It was a marble or whatever, stone countertop, and it broke. So I thought, I'm never doing this stuff again. It's just crazy. So that was that, and I came back in October. That was all 2006, and in October of 2006, I got a job at Avis Rent-A-Car, as a budget rent-a-car rather, as a customer service person, and I liked it. It was a lot of fun to do. About a year later, I was promoted to manager. Avis, and then shortly after that, Avis and Budget joined together. So my wife was actually, because of the grandfather clause, my wife was she was a customer service person, and I was a manager, but I wasn't able to manage her. So I was over at the in the returns area in the car wash. So that was my responsibility. So that was kind of cool. I really, really enjoyed that job. I can't say I enjoyed the managers there, but I was one of them. But it was like everything was political. Everything was Everything was geared to get rid of you to bring our friends in. That was the kind of atmosphere that it was. Um, so you maintain, you do your job. I remember I had to fire a few people, and then I had to go to the court cases via telephone to give the company side of the issue because it was my hands on them. And basically, what happened in those firings were, people just you get accumulate points for being ill, calling in sick, and for showing up late. You get points. Well, this guy was way over the max, and we had so much grace on him, and so they ended up getting fired without unemployment benefits because of that, and I felt kind of bad about that. But the company wanted me to do it, so I did. Um, I just gave him what was on the papers. That's all I told him. Anyway, so we go on, and now new management comes in, and every time there's new management, there's always a cleaning of the guard, where they clean everybody underneath them, so they can bring their own people in. And I was one of those that got fired out of that. That was kind of really weird. It was just, I got into an argument with one of the other managers. They weren't thinking this thing through, thinking one of the things through, and it got to be like, well, then you just tell me how you want me to do that, and that's kind of how it ended up being. I was ended up firing for insubordination, which I didn't really challenge because what I did could be constituted as that because I wasn't really following the way that they wanted, and I was just upset. So anyway, I got fired from Avis after a number of years there and working with them, and really seeing the business grow at the SeaTac airport. So we go through that, and now we're in 2013, and in the process, 2008, my mother dies the day before her 75th birthday. So I was working graveyard at the time, and I remember flying out to New York to her funeral, and it was really a sad thing. But the funny thing was, it was like, there was so much stuff going on, and I was like, it's not proper to talk about some of that stuff here, but being the son, I was like, wow, I should have been, I should have been, at least allowed to be a part of the funeral, but I just stood off to the side, and that was no big deal. So, we go out now. We're in 2013, and I didn't have a job. I didn't have any prospects. So I ended up getting a job at Farmers Insurance, become an insurance agent. Now, keep in mind, I just don't like sales. I'm just not a good salesman. I'm not going to force you to get anything you don't want. I'm going to offer it to you, but if you don't want it, I'm not going to sit here and just argue with you about it. It's not who I am. And I guess I had to do that. It wasn't one of those things where you got fired. But I remember in 2015, as the agency was growing, and I remember we come up to 2015, and in January, my wife says, "Do you want to move to? Do you still want to move to Redding?" And I said, "Yeah." So that's January of 2015. She goes, "Do you want to move to Redding?" And I said, "Yes, I do. I still do." So she goes, "Okay, let's do it." So we'll pick up there the next time. But, that's basically, in a nutshell, those are the 12 years. Now, all these things happened, and makes a big deal coming up, because everything that happened until this point, 42 years of being born again, all culminates starting 2015. So we'll pick that up the next time. Thanks.